see what we can do to help each other out here.
Lauren and Melinda, are you guys able to hear us again?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Seeing a quorum, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:39 PM, and Brian, I'll look to you to call the roll.
CJ Cullinan. Matthew Crabtree. Here. Melinda Elswick.
Here,
Lauren Cooper.
Here.
Chair Parker.
Here,
Joseph Fergola. Is it Fergola?
Gola, I think.
Fergola. Ken Chu. And then staff Eric Sampson is absent. Adeline Ingfus and absent. Councilmember Wright.
Here.
And then I'm Brian Isom. And then with us, we also have a guest, Chris Geddes. Did I get that right? Geddes, the HPC specialist for the city of Aurora.
Okay. And Lauren, Melinda, so can you hear me?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so the audio is good. You're on Brian's computer. The TV is just not working. That's not cooperating. So we're just gonna kind of have to make do off Brian's computer. So I can see you a little bit, but if you have questions or comments, feel free to verbally speak up, and Brian will try to watch too if you raise your hands or anything like that. But I don't have you on the TV, but we can hear each other.
Are we recording okay? Okay.
Yeah, recording is good. So with that, we'll move to approval of the minutes. And is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Moved by Matt Crabtree. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Lauren Cooper seconds. There is a motion and a second to approve the February 21st, 2024 minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Well, no. I had a comment about the minutes.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip over if there was discussion. Is there an error or something needs to be changed?
It's a minor thing. I believe it was me that nominated you to continue as chair. Cash, Matt and I kind of tied for the honor, and
I apologize
maybe
for not
CJ
remembering.
seconded.
Yeah, I apologize for not remembering who made that motion. I should remember that.
That's okay. And I mean, whatever. But like I say, it's something that's not correct in the minutes.
Okay, so, Brian, I guess if you can make a note, if someone can move to approve the minutes with that correction, that Melinda nominated me to continue as chair.
Matt, do you recall that?
Yeah, I do recall that. Yeah, that sounds accurate.
And that's a motion.
Yeah, I'll move.
Okay.
I'll move, even though I moved before. We do have a motion on the table, but
Okay.
we'll be all right.
Okay,
So I move that we approve the minutes as amended, as amended per Melinda's statement.
okay. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Lauren Cooper seconded. The motion to approve the minutes is amended. All those in favor say aye. We can start in the room. Matt?
Aye.
It's an aye for me.
Aye.
And
That's-
aye.
That's unanimous on the ayes to approve the minutes as amended to reflect Melinda nominating me to continue as chair. Thank you, Melinda. Public forum, I do not see anyone in the room here for public forum. Is there anyone online?
You were actually on the agenda, Chris.
I see that. I did not prepare anything, but I can certainly
No.
speak or answer questions, so.
Yeah.
We do not have anybody else
Okay.
online.
All right, so no one here for public forum. We'll go to new business. Chris Geddes is here from the Historic Preservation Commission. Well, you're the Historic Preservation Specialist and the staff liaison to the
Right.
Historic Preservation Commission in
Yes.
Aurora, is that right?
Yep, A-Town.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll let you introduce yourself. I don't know how much Matt told you. We had a little bit of talk off the record before there was a quorum here about, I promised a little bit of a brief history of our commission, and the other commissioners can fill in, because we've all of us that are present here tonight forming the quorum have been on the commission for a number of years. Some, I think the other three since the beginning of this commission. So the municipal code that was passed in 2004, so 20 years ago now, gave the authority for a historic preservation commission to be created in Inglewood, but really did not imbue that commission with the power to do anything. This commission was created and has existed since 2017.
Since 2017.
Yeah. And so there are three original members, Matt and Melinda and Lauren, all go back to 2017.
Is that 2017?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm 2018, I think. I've been on the commission since then. And so one of the major projects that everyone that is here tonight on the commission was involved in was coming up with proposed revisions to our municipal code to give the commission the authority to actually make landmark designations on historically significant properties and districts. And we spent many hours, many meetings working together and crafting the language for that ordinance and revising it. And we borrowed from other municipalities. We borrowed from the certified local government language. We are not a certified local government, a CLG. So the revisions that we proposed, by and large, with a couple of revisions from our city council, were passed last fall as part of a much broader overhaul of the development code that you may have heard about in the news and seen things about. But ours was passed without a whole lot of discussion, or I would say controversy. And so now we have the power to designate properties as historic landmarks, also districts, and through a process that's outlined in the ordinance. We have not had occasion to do that yet. No one has applied for a designation, but we did have a training, I think that was just last meeting, about the now quasi-judicial nature of our commission, being that we have that power to designate landmarks. And so we went through all of that with the city attorney's office. And so we're looking forward to hopefully being able to do that at some point soon. But that's where we're at as a commission. And I know Matt invited you because, I mean, we were just, there's no particular topic we had in mind to discuss with you. There's probably some questions from the folks on the commission, but we'd love to hear about your experience in Aurora and your background. That's us. Did I get
No,
that
that's
all
great.
right?
By the way, thank you for coming.
Yes,
This is
thank
wonderful.
No, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We are a small city, much smaller than Aurora, and we're a small and relatively new commission. And there's a fascinating history actually that even goes before 2017. Apparently in the Inglewood Municipal Code, there was provision for the Historic Preservation Commission in the code like 2003, and it was never acted upon.
Okay, so the 2017 date is like when it actually formed, even though it goes back to 2003, 4.
There was
Nobody ever really did anything.
There was a code provision in 03 or 04, but there had never been a commission until 2017.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what's fascinating about all this is that I mean, people had been asking for it. There were various historical societies that came and went. The Inglewood Historic Preservation Society, we've been around since 2012, and the actions of Doug Cohn, which I'm sure you know Doug very well from the, do you know Doug? Doug Cohn, the guy with the suspenders?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody knows him by the suspenders.
Was...
His work on the Inglewood Historic Preservation Society, now Historic Inglewood, really pushed City Council to enact the Historic Preservation Commission and the importance of it.
We have a, sorry to interrupt you, we have a minimum number of members. It's actually an agenda item tonight
Yes,
that have to be members also of Historic Inglewood.
Okay.
That's required by our ordinance.
Okay.
So it's a rather unique arrangement because there is a historic society in the city
Right.
that is a nonprofit, operates completely separately from the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a Historic Preservation Commission, and the two do share redundant roles in some cases, but then separate responsibilities in others. And it's important to define that difference, and obviously we are this here is the legislative authority over legislative recommendations for City Council for historic matters, whereas the Historic Society operates more in a community environment. But Anyway, that's kind of the background from my position, my history. But what I find great about this is obviously Aurora is a much larger city, and in many ways I look up to you guys as going, hey, you know what you're doing.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
But networking is important, I think, and I don't know
Yeah.
if this is something that's ever really been done with other historic preservation commissions, but it would be great to be able to work with other cities and
Yeah.
find out what they're doing, how things have worked with them. Now that we're suddenly, oh surprise, we're quasi-judicial authority. You know, just kind of as a general conversation,
Yeah.
you know, I figured it'd be great to invite you. So thank you for coming.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. So I guess I would start out saying, so I'm at the 26-year mark for being in historic preservation, which is kind of crazy when I think about it. So I have undergraduate degree in history, master's in historic preservation from CSU, and I've worked at the State Historic Preservation Office. I've worked for Historic Denver in the Discover Denver survey program, so going out and surveying with volunteers and documenting the resources in the city. I've done a little bit of consulting work, and it was really not my thing. And the Aurora preservation specialist job is like the dream job. I've wanted it for 25 years, and it took a while and a windy road and so forth. But, you know, when I was at what's called the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, or History Colorado, I worked like encoding survey forms, and then I worked on the National Register. So I'm really familiar with designation, so National and State Register. I've also been on the Littleton Historical Preservation Board when I lived there for 3 years, and they are quasi-judicial as well. Aurora is not at present, and so you know, I went from being on the Preservation Commission in Aurora to being on the Preservation Commission in Littleton, and it was like, well, you can't have more than 2 people, you know, because then it's considered a meeting and all this stuff, and I was like, well, then how do you have subcommittees and how do you get anything done? And you can't bring certain stuff up in a meeting because it wasn't given to certain person to publish and all this, and it was very nerve-wracking. But it's also where you get, you know, where you can make change is by being quasi-judicial. So Aurora is moving towards that way, and we are updating our ordinance this year. They did a whole big update in 2019 of the UDO, which is like the Universal Development Ordinance or something.
That's essentially what happened.
Yeah, and Littleton, I went through the ULUC there, which was the Universal Land Use Code.
Oh, wow.
And when they did that in Aurora, we had like I don't know, 9-page ordinance, because it dealt with like professionals being on the commission and what balance of that you want and so forth. And when they did the transfer, they pretty much dropped off everything but 3 paragraphs. So everything about like public meetings, how we notify people of public meetings, the time frame that you have to do the notification in, all of that got dropped out of the UDO. And so all of these things that have been kind of our guiding force are gone. And oddly enough, I was the one who found it because I was looking for something in the UDO and couldn't find it. And I asked my boss, and he was like, boy, and how did we miss that, you know, kind of thing. So we have a lot to do to kind of reconstruct that, and then it has to go, you know, before a number of committees before it gets to city council. And there's certain things that have been missing for a while. So things like addressing historic districts. So we really can't designate a local landmark historic district because the way it was written in the previous code is that it has to be 100% owner consent. And I think anybody...
And we thought ours was hard.
Yeah.
And I think anybody realizes, you know, that you're never going to get 100% consensus. So it's not practical. And I know at the state, when we had national and state register districts, it was really national register where you need a majority. State register required 100% owner consent. And there's one state registered district, and it's because one person owns all 5 buildings in this small Eastern Plains town.
Wow.
And I think one thing people forget about, and I had to bring this up in Littleton, is when you're dealing with historic districts, and I don't know how your code is written, but when you're allowing people to kind of have a vote, you know, as far as yay or nay, if people own more than one property, they should only get 1 vote. And so if you don't have it set up that way, whenever you get ready to amend it, that I always recommend that, because you could have somebody like in Littleton who owns 13 properties down there.
They get 13
And-
votes.
And they could, you know, if they got 13 votes, they could kill a district nomination. And so it needs to be something where like they get 1 vote because they own property, not because they get 13 votes because they own
Yeah.
13 properties.
Our code doesn't speak to that, and I
Okay.
hadn't considered, I personally had not, that's a good
Right,
point.
right.
I had not considered
Yeah.
that particular scenario, and it's probably true. That situation is probably true in the one district that is of most significance, that is discussed the most.
Arapahoe Acres.
That I'm thinking.
Oh,
And there was really the only thing that council had much discussion with us, and
Mhm.
all of us had some times presenting with council and going through the changes we were proposing, was the threshold for district designation. We started at the national, the majority,
Mhm.
and council then wanted to raise it to 75, and then we landed on a 2/3, right, is where
Yeah.
it settled finally.
60%, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we thought that was a fair compromise.
and I think that's a great idea, and
Yeah.
that's what we're looking at doing when we update ours, to include that, you know, the majority, you know, because National Register is like 51%, which is basically, you know, kind of just barely over. And then somebody brought up the 75%, because there's somebody else besides Inglewood that's doing that. And I was like, you're not gonna get that, like, you're effectively trying to kill the district that way. And so we were kind of talking about it. I have a subcommittee of 2 people. When I did subcommittees last month, I was like, we're just gonna head towards quasi judicial. So I have a couple folks who are revising the rules and procedures for the commission, and then a lot of that will translate into the ordinance being updated. And so we're gonna, you know, update the owner provision, because we do have some significant districts. We had the 1958 Parade of Homes.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first one where they were all concentrated on one block. Prior to that, they had been scattered around the whole metro area, and you had to drive to all these different places. So this was the first time they were concentrated in one block, and different builders would each get a different house.
Oh, wow.
But without the, you know, the historic district being addressed at all, we can't really move forward on that one. The other thing that we are in the process of removing is we were one of 3 cities in the state that if something is listed on the National Register in the city, it was automatically listed in the local landmark. And I have a feeling, nobody will own up to it, but my sense is that they did it because a lot of people didn't want to do local landmark. They were afraid of restrictions, and so they went for National Register. And so it bypassed the city council
Oh,
and
wow.
got properties landmarked. So we have 2 that happened that way. And I can remember when I worked at the SHPO, the CLG coordinator had been a lawyer previously, and he was like, Aurora needs to get rid of this. And I'm like, well, I don't work there, and I have no control over that.
How hard is it to get on the National Register opposed to at the local level?
It really depends on the property, but the National Register, I mean, it's not the highest form because there's a layer above that. But, you know, there's criteria that has to be met, and so there's significance to a resource, and then there's integrity. And so you could have a building that has so much significance, but it has 0 integrity. Like somebody, you know, changed all the windows, added in a big addition on one side, and covered it in vinyl siding. But to a local community, it's like, you know, this was our town founders, you know, building, or it was the city hall or whatever. So it wouldn't meet the criteria for National Register, but would meet typically, and I'm gonna say this, because I say it all the time. Denver is the one exception because they are super strict. They're even harder to get local landmark than National Register, in my opinion. But a lot of, we've had 2 properties, and one was a Craftsman bungalow that's just amazing and completely intact. And she went for National Register. She's like, ooh, I want the National Register designation in the back and the blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, we told her she was automatically local landmark. For her, she didn't mind because she's like, I want to, like, I'm just the next caretaker of this house. And I want to, you know, I want the next person to take care of it. But there are some people that are really resistant to local landmarking. And we're certainly not as strict as Denver, or Fort Collins, or, you know, some of the other communities, but.
And the one that comes to mind, the Molly Brown House on Wadsworth.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the Abaca
His-
Lodge,
Pardon me?
the Abaca Lodge.
To me, growing up, it was just the Molly Brown House. It's
Okay.
on the corner of
Yeah.
Wadsworth and, is it Dartmouth?
It's not
Or
Dartmouth.
Yale, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's Yale, not Dartmouth.
Yeah. So it was her vacation house.
Yeah.
Um,
The Abaca Lodge.
And so it probably has national designation, but it's changed so many hands, and how much has it changed over the
And
years?
I think it's vacant as of right now, because there used to be, there's something going on there actually, recently I was driving by, but, yeah, I mean, but for us, you know, National Registry in Inglewood, I think we have the Inglewood Post Office.
Okay.
We have the bank, the Charles Deaton Bank. which is
Yes.
the big donor.
Yeah, the sculpture.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny story about that, actually. I was talking with, and this was throughout the process that they were doing that. In the 80s, they dug that kind of thing there for the flood mitigation right next to it.
Yeah.
And the owners at the time of the bank were worried about structural issues because there was a lot of banging and moving and the vibrations and stuff like that. So the city and the contractor brought in an engineer to look at the building and make sure that none of the work that they were doing was affecting the foundation. And the engineer frankly said, I can't comment on this because I don't know how they built this.
Wow.
Has it always been a bank?
It's always been a bank
Uh-huh,
since they
yeah.
went. Actually, historically, there was a bank there since the founding Englewood. There was
Yeah, there was a previous, I went to
Yeah.
Diane Ray's
Yeah,
talk on
yeah,
that one.
there you go.
Diane Ray Tomaso's talk
Yeah.
on that, yeah.
But, and apart from that, the train station depot
Okay.
should be.
I thought that was in the register. I know it's one of only 2 of its type that remains, the
Yeah.
other being one in
Is it
New
national or
Mexico.
state?
I think it's national, but I don't know that for sure.
I met with somebody out there.
Okay.
When I was at the SHPO, because they wanted to designate it, and we were talking about ways to do that, and then I never heard from them again, so they must have come back later.
That's why I think there was a hesitation there because there was state funds.
Yeah, state historical fund.
That
Maybe
was
what
provided.
Maybe what I'm thinking of, the one in New Mexico, I'm fairly sure is
Yeah.
designated, that's of that same
And
type.
what is that, I'm sorry?
The train station.
The depot, it's, the one in Inglewood is one of only 2 of that
Right.
type that's still in existence. The other is in Glorieta, New Mexico, and that one I'm pretty sure is a national designated landmark.
Right, there was a little, how do I put this? A little bit of turmoil, a little bit of resistance with the current owner of that property and what was asked to be done and whatnot.
Was it used as a museum briefly, or
No.
at some point?
Kind of.
Well, they're trying
That's
to
what
do
they
that.
wanted.
Maybe that's what it was, okay.
Yeah,
I feel like I remember this,
Um,
the building.
I believe one of the stipulations of them to move forward and continue, one of the stipulations from the city is to receive state and federal designation of the
Okay.
property. So,
Yeah, when you do National Register, you're automatically listed on the state register, but the
Right.
reverse is not true.
Mm.
And like I said, you know, like Aurora is one of 3 cities, one of them picks that.
Mm.
We're fixing it this year, and the CLG coordinator is ecstatic, and Pueblo will be the last one remaining.
Oh.
So it's just, it's, you know, it's a way that bypasses kind of city council involvement as well as kind of the local process of having a public hearing and inviting people to comment on it. And so we are looking at getting rid of that
Right.
as well. So that's one thing. If you don't have that in your ordinance, then you are good to go in that regard.
it's always good to hear that other side of things, and we've never tested our ordinance. It is brand new.
Well, that's what I was asking. I was like, so local landmarks, so, you haven't done anything yet. Do you have anything in mind?
As to recommend, we did send out, or we're in the process of sending out a letter. Per opinion came in and did a survey of properties within the city of Englewood that were potentially historically significant or rare properties, I guess would be more appropriately to call it, as the properties that still remain. Englewood's going through, as everywhere is, a lot of development, and a lot of the homes in Englewood were, originally this area was, first plotted and developed in the, late 1800s, like most of the Denver areas were spotted like that. Over the years, the development cycles, I think, happened where there was a big rush in the early 1900s, and then there was a big rush in the 1920s, and then there was a big rush in the 1950s.
Post-World War II.
And then there was a big rush in the 1970s, 60s, and 70s, and then there was these bursts of development, and it caused this kind of phasing of properties. Now, what was weird about Englewood is that I know my block is one of those examples of that. There was once a house that was built in 1880, and then the next newest house on that block was built in like 1905. So if you can imagine the time frame.
Yeah.
And then you've got homes that were, now you drive down my block, they're all duplexes, but.
Yeah. That's where we started.
Anyway, but then, it was that kind of stage thing, and it filled in Englewood in kind of an interesting way, because there were very few planned developments. There were, the Cherlin neighborhood with the Cherlin streetcar and things like that. That was a planned development.
Arapahoe Acres.
Obviously, Arapahoe Acres was very much a planned development. And then there were later planned developments in the I think 80s and 90s around, areas around Bellevue Park and things like that.
Yeah.
70s, 80s, and 90s around there. But anyway, it was interesting to see that with the opinion survey. So we took the information from the opinion survey, and we're sending out letters to people saying your house may actually be of historic significance, and we'd invite you to, seek designation. We do have the Brown House, which is at Dartmouth and University. It was actually originally on the corner. It got moved in. It's a beautiful Victorian construction, massive mansion. Of sorts. It's currently the Joshua School now, I believe. But we would love to have that, historically designated, because it has a lot of history there. Of course, you've got the Scarrett House, Thomas Scarrett.
Yes.
Everybody has.
That's on the National Register.
It is on the National Register. That is true. That is actually.
Because I remember. Did I work on? No, that had to be before my time. I remember they've gotten some grants from the SHF.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I remember the Scarrett House, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful story. Every town has their founding story. Thomas Scarrett was the founder of this area, basically, and created Broadway, right? And the great story along that. But that's another home of historic significance. So getting on the local register with those, having those people engage in this process. Now, the one thing that we entered in with this is we wanted to make sure that this was voluntary. We're new at this. We don't want to make it super restrictive and frightening.
Ours requires owner consent on designation.
Yeah, ours does too.
Sure.
And it should, a local program should. Yeah.
We also don't want historic designation to become a bad word. Denver, that happened and seems to happen on a regular basis, where, it's just one of those things we don't ever enter into and have that happen here. So,
We had, last week we had a meeting, our HPC meeting, and we had a COA, which is a certificate of appropriateness. So our landmarks, we have two types of COAs. One is a minor. So things like if you have some rotting siding and you're going to replace it with material in kind, you're going to repoint brick.
Right.
I'm trying to think what else. You need to re-roof. Those are all things that are minor alterations. They're not changing the architectural or historical character of the property of the house. And so there's like a one-page form they fill out. They send it to me. I look at it. I look at any plans, before pictures, sign off on it. let them know and they proceed. Then we have major alterations, which would be things like if somebody wants to put an addition on a historic building, they want to replace all the windows. You know, the wood siding is too much to maintain. We want to cover it in vinyl. Those kind of things that do have, you know, an adverse effect on the building and why it was designated in the first place. And so those, same one-page form, the 4 pictures, any, you know, plans, drawings, anything like that. And that one goes before the Historic Preservation Commission for a public hearing. And so I have to do a notification to the city clerk where they publish it, that we were having a hearing to review this. And so we were supposed to have 3 at last week's meeting. One was for the Fox Theater to do some security bars on these little side canopies. They have homeless people who are camping under them as shelters, but they're setting fires and it's damaging the building.
Oh my God, that's terrifying with an older building like that too, because
Yeah.
if that catches that.
Well, and they did it at another landmark building, and a year later, you know, the city is still saying that the tenant of that building needs to pay for fixing it. And the tenant is like, but you're the owner, you need to fix it. And so in the meantime, like we have this hole in the roof, the canopy roof. And so I'm just like, fix my building, like you each split it and let's move on. And it's the same kind of canopy and stucco underneath, and oddly enough, stucco can catch fire. So we're just kind of doing like a simple bar design to, you know, make it safe so that the building is not in jeopardy. But they're removable, so if something changes in that area of town, then they can remove them and we open that back up. And then we had one for a one-room schoolhouse. They're doing some minor alterations work, so replacement of rotted siding, repairing some wood windows so they'll look the same, re-roofing with wood shingles. And then at a couple of people's suggestion, mine being one of them, is they're removing all of the bushes around the building because first of all, it never had bushes, and it's just like having building foliage that close to a building and then watering it, and the building's wood, and it's on, it's been moved twice, and so it's on a high school campus now.
Oh, wow.
And so kids can kind of hang out behind there. And so we're getting rid of all of that, which is really exciting. And then they're putting an ADA ramp on the back. Oh, cool. So they already had converted one of the windows to a door. And, but the Smoky Hill High School right there has a significant disabled population. So they're in wheelchairs and they can't go into school.
Oh, wow.
I was like, well, if the back stairs are rotting, like, why don't we put a concrete ramp in?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's considered a major alteration because it's a change. But, you know, we brought it before the HPC, they reviewed it and signed off on it. They agreed that that was, you know, a way to bring a new group of people into the building, and it's pristine on the inside. And the Cherry Creek Valley Historical Society has a lot of artifacts and maps and books and stuff in there. And so the high schools actually has a club that's getting involved in doing some new stuff for the building, and maybe doing some native grasses to plant around. And they're creating a new website for the school, the one-room school, and like it's just really exciting to see them get invested in it. And then, you know, like they're kind of looking out for that building because they care about it, and they see one of their fellow students doing something to the building. You know, they can be like, hey, wait a minute, like, you know, that's not okay. And then our third one was solar panels on the house. And long story short is my predecessor, my boss, and I have met with the owner multiple times. And at a meeting in November with somebody from the State Preservation Office, we went through this whole thing about you can put them on the garage, it's not historic, but anything on the house requires HPC approval. And I drove by in February and there were solar panels on the house. And I was like, and then permitting called me and they're like, well, we need an approval on this. And I was like, no, I have no paperwork. Like, you know, this requires, and it's been a doozy. So I've been dealing with legal, I've been dealing with the permitting office and all this because they did an upgrade to the system and they didn't realize that the historic properties weren't getting flagged.
So they were issuing permits.
So they issued the permit, but as the permit lady told me, she said, you know, just because we issue the permit doesn't mean they have the go-ahead to do it. So her explanation for that was, think about like if you live in a neighborhood with an HOA,
Right.
you go to the city and you get your permit to put a porch on the back, right?
Doesn't mean the HOA.
But the
is okay.
HOA hasn't necessarily approved it, so there's multiple layers, and I had specifically in multiple times in email and phone and in person said the ZOA needs to come to me so that I can schedule it with the HPC.
Wow.
And when the solar company said, well, we handle paperwork, they meant the permit.
It's not, it's like the kids playing mom and dad, you know. We know mom's gonna say no, so we'll go to dad and
Yeah.
do it, yeah.
And so unfortunately, I think there was some of this like, well, this is what we want to do, and so we'll just, you know, like, what's the saying about asking for forgiveness rather than
Right.
permission?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so we had the assistant city attorney come to the meeting, and
Oh, wow.
we'd had some ugly phone calls with the owners.
So can they lose designation if they do this type of stuff? And can they just end up saying, no, forget it, we don't want designation anymore, take it away?
Well, so they could request to be delisted. I don't know that we would delist them. It's one of our 1891 houses, and out of like 14 of them, we only have like 5 left. It's like when you look at these solar panels on an 1891 house, it doesn't match. But you know, we're not against solar, and Denver just created a policy after like working on it for quite a while, and Fort Collins just created one. And but again, you know, it's like, this is why the COA process was supposed to happen before, because when he, you know, showed us the drawings and stuff, and I had them on the screen, it's like, well, if we had knowledge that they were gonna go this close to the front, we would have said, no, can we find some other places to put them? Like, we had a meeting with the solar company on Monday, and the guy was like, well, maybe I could add a few more to the garage and remove them from the house. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, this is why we're supposed to have this conversation
Ahead of time. yeah.
ahead of time, yes.
Right.
And, you know, the owner and his girlfriend or partner, whatever she is, you know, is calling permitting and pretending like they don't know anything. Well, what's a COA and all this stuff? But yet then he filled out the COA form for me and sent it in, and, you know, just all of this kind of, like, the story isn't fully adding up.
And are they the ones that got the designation, or did they
No,
buy the
it was
house
designated.
afterwards?
It was it's the 6th property designated in Aurora, so it was like 1988 or 89.
Well, it's amazing that you guys have had the program as long as that. That is
Yeah.
incredible.
So I had a question.
Yeah.
So I have, where I live, there is a house that was like the second house built in my area. It was either one of the barn houses or the store in that area. So it's been there a long time. That's what I was trying to do, pull it up. So based on the age of the house and how long it has been there, would that be a house that they would want to look at as possible designation because of how long it's one of the 2 original houses in my section of Inglewood, which is, you know, way west. Most people don't know it's even Inglewood. One of the criteria, you know, I'm new to all of this. I have to figure out the acronyms that you guys are using, think about it. So, you know, we have 2 houses there. One of the guys, we're afraid that he's gonna scrape it, so it's one of the 2 original houses there, and we want to talk to him and say, no. The inside of the house probably needs a lot of work, but you could look at his house, because it's the only house that has like a flat top on it, and know that.
Was it a commercial building, or it was a house?
They're both houses.
Okay.
But they were originally used like for a country store, and the other, who knows what it was used for. So I just wonder, you know, if they want to say, hey, we want, it's special in this area. Everyone in the neighborhood talks about those 2 houses and the history behind them, and they would hate for them to be scraped.
Yeah.
If someone, you know, the couple that lives in one of them wanted to do a designation, what would end up being the process? I mean, it's not the Joshua House or any of the other big, huge houses that are more east in Inglewood.
So do you all have a form, like, for the local landmark
Yeah,
process?
they have to go online and fill out the application
Mhm.
for it. The criteria are intentionally, that are in the ordinance, pretty flexible. I mean, it's not, things don't have to be a certain age to be historically significant. I mean, I think it says in the ordinance that 50 years that's probably a point in time where it's likely to be, more likely to be historically significant. But yeah, any structure like that has a particular historic character because of the architecture or its prominence in the area with the visual features. Yeah, I mean, those certainly sound potentially historically significant, but the owners have to do it voluntarily. So if someone thinks they're gonna make $1 million from scraping it, my guess is they're probably not gonna apply for the designation.
Right.
But it might be worth doing some public outreach, and you could tell them that, see, and this is where being a certified local government really comes into play, is because if you're a CLG, and you're locally landmarked, then you can qualify for the state tax credit, the preservation tax credit. And so then they could get money to rehabilitate the property. And so there are financial incentives.
Okay.
But without being a CLG, I mean, there's the state historical fund, but they don't typically award to private homeowners. They have to come up with more of a cash match for the grant. So some of it, a lot of it is like public outreach and education.
I
Segues.
have a question,
Go ahead, Lauren.
and it's kind of been something I've been wondering the whole time, but you just said it, is, do you have any suggestions for building up public outreach and education? Because I feel like we've got all these things. It's, the application, the ordinance, everything. It's now all brand new. And how do we promote it? How do we get the community to know about it, get the community to understand the benefits of preservation? And then also in regards to the CLG, it's something we've talked about a lot. It's something I would love for us to be, but I feel like it's not really going anywhere. So just we've had Lindsay Flewellen from SHPO come and talk to us, but it just, oh, nice. But yeah, she came and talked, and then that was kind of the end. So like any just ways to like get people on board.
So I think there's some different things that you can do. One would be to hold some meetings like in different neighborhoods. And now with the weather getting nicer, that would facilitate that a lot. And whether there's some other kind of fair or event going on where you could have a booth, and kind of, like have some, I don't know, prizes, candy, whatever, and, invite people to, like, what building matters to you in your neighborhood? What building would you want to see? What do you think is the most important, part of Broadway?
Yeah.
What's one building that if it were to go away, you would be so upset, you would cry, you would be devastated, whatever. And that's something you could even do on social media, is, put a poll out on, Instagram or Facebook, and say, like, find out what buildings people are interested in. If they say, well, my house is from, 1898, and, I have these really cool, built-in wood cabinets and stuff, you're like, okay, here's somebody who's kind of interested in. And, when you have someone that goes through the process because they're interested in it, then they tell other people. And so, getting that word out that way.
Well, and we have, is it, Brian, neighborhood nights or the nights at the park coming up where, it's Thursday, last year it was Thursdays, every other Thursday for several months, get a tent out there.
You have concerts, and
We do, we have the concert series.
that would be another place where you could have.
One thing I would say is we need to remember the things that Sergio talked about the board going out and trying to bring in people prior to quasi judicial meetings and have public hearings. is that, and I wasn't here last week, so I did, or last
And I
meeting,
wasn't either.
but I know that he had talked about that before being an issue. Ex parte communication with the future applicant on property. So
Yeah.
what we have talked to, and I know Sergio talked a little bit about this last week and then reached out to Madeline. Fortunately, he's not here today because he's running triple duty between this meeting. I think there was another meeting over there and another board meeting over on the other side. Working on kind of a communication action plan that can be administered through the neighborhood. Madeline's position rather than coming directly from board members.
Yeah, and that is on our agenda. It's a couple items down
Yes.
for the update on that.
So-
I assumed it's probably something that's going to have to carry to next month since Madeline's not here tonight, because I know it was a comms thing to deal with that, but yeah.
So for me to understand, at the park and stuff, we could have like neighborhood nights, the concert series and stuff. This group could get information out saying that what historic preservation does and what is available out. But if there is a quasi-judicial coming up where a decision's coming up, that's where myself and this group cannot be involved.
So Chris,
Is that
have you,
correct?
have you had any problems with this in Littleton?
They've
No,
talked
it-
about it being even up front. So like our planning and zoning commission, we don't necessarily want them going to neighborhood meetings because the neighborhood meetings, a project is being discussed.
Right,
They're labeled
during a
later to
PUD,
vote.
correct? During
Yes.
PUD.
That I
But-
understand.
But, right, but what I'm talking about is getting the information. Okay, we have a tent at the neighborhood nights or a concert with flyers saying, this is what we have. We have the availability of a designation. Because how many people in the city know it's available? I never knew
Right.
until my first, and that's what I'm saying. Getting the information out, not saying your house can be, and this is what we're
Or
doing.
has to
Right.
be, you're not.
But-
you're not-
Exactly.
That's
I'm
what
saying,
we want to make sure that we're okay with our attorneys before we give you guys the go-ahead. And
Okay,
then we have to pull it all back and say you can't do
Right.
that. I'd rather not.
I mean, handing out information, not doing it. so.
Yes.
And Brian, that's what's
Is
great.
it, I'm gonna jump in. Is it something we could partner with Historic Inglewood on? And they could have the booth and just disseminate our information?
Yes.
I mean, it's, the next agenda item is a little bit more narrow about the membership, but, yes, I have, that seems like Historic Inglewood, because if they're not a member of this commission, Historic Inglewood can encourage and promote it as much as they want. Folks who are involved in that organization who are not commissioners or members of the city council, they can do whatever they want to encourage folks to apply.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
However.
but I'll say, like in Littleton, I mean, we were quasi judicial and they used to do, these, gosh, it was like meet and eats. And so different city council members, would hold like the park in their ward or district, whatever. They would hold a meet and eat. And so they'd have food and stuff and then different city departments would have a booth. And, we never had a booth there because we were always told about it like 2 days before it happened, that we could be there. But a couple of us would go. We would just make sure there weren't more than 2 people there because then it would be, you know, we didn't want people thinking it was a meeting.
Yeah.
But we would have a couple of us would go and, you know, we would be there to talk to people about, you know, questions. And I know that I talked to quite a few people about, if they were interested in designation, that we were there. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to help them through the process and to answer questions. And so, you know.
And so what, we have to be careful because what the city, like Brian said, what the city attorney's office has told us is we commissioners cannot do that. That is ex parte communication because we make the decision. So staff, city staff like Brian or Eric Sampson, who is our regular liaison, can do that as much as they want because they're staff. They're not the ones making the quasi judicial decision ultimately. But that's the city attorney's office is sort of figuring all of this out, which I completely understand with us as we go because it's also new for this
Yeah.
commission. So they're being cautious, as attorneys tend to be about these things. I am an attorney by training, so I
Well,
can
I mean,
certainly
our
appreciate
chair, is a retired historical architect from, well, I shouldn't say it, I say it like I'm still there. The chair is a retired historical architect from the National Park Service. And I mean, he gave tours. He's also a member of Historic Littleton Inc., so there's kind of the partner organization.
Sure.
He would give tours for HLI, and point out different historic resources and stuff. And then he knows everybody in the town, you know, like in the historic section. And so he would talk to people all the time. And like he was working with the Drinkwine mortuary, because that's a significant mid-century modern building. And you know, they're super excited about designation. And they're like, we don't know where to start. And he's like, I'll help you write the nomination. And I'm doing that in Aurora. I'm writing one. I mean, I'm not on the commission, but I mean, technically our ordinance as it is right now says that staff cannot initiate local landmark applications, only commissioners or, you know, owners or, you know, interested parties. And, but I went and met with the owner of the Big Top. And I have loved that building since I was 4. And, you know, I met with her and she was like, you know, she's this sweet little Asian woman and she had a market there for a while and she, you know, now she's renting it out to a church, but she's like, you know, I love this building. I just paid $49,000 to fix the roof. Like, it's gonna stay here. And I'm like, well, let's landmark it and get you some tax credits for other work you might need to do if you need to upgrade the plumbing or the HVAC. And she was like, all right. She goes, well, who's gonna write it? And I'm like, I am. I know this building. I know the history. I know, like, and she is just so excited that I'm so excited about her building. And so, you know, again, and I don't know if you guys have a requirement for certain professions to be represented on the commission.
We do not.
Because in Littleton we did, and in Aurora we do, and I know Boulder does, I know Fort Collins does, Denver certainly does, where they have, you know, like an historian, they have historical architect, they have an archaeologist, and architectural historian. And so kind of having that balance of citizen members and professionals that, you know certain buildings, like that was designed by so-and-so, that was designed by Charles Deaton, we need to preserve that kind of thing, and being able to explain to people why their buildings are significant, and to get them like excited that they're going to be part of a special group, and they're going to get a plaque, and they're going to get this, and you know, they have access to some financial incentives and that kind of thing. And like, look at Arapahoe Acres, you know, tours and, you know, Modernism Week that's here, zeroes in on that, and the Mid-Mod Mile in Littleton, and how it just draws people.
So this is, and I think, and we probably can't go on too much longer.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But this is wonderful having this. That's why it was great to have this on.
Yeah.
Because it kind of creates that real delineation here. And
Lots of ideas, too.
Lots of ideas, lots of topics. This is what's fantastic about hearing from an organization that has done this a lot longer than we have. I absolutely respect Sergio's position in the city manager or city attorney's office. We have to, right? Obviously,
but maybe
personally and have to.
Conversation to talk about what some of these things mean that they've put in, or that they, you know, they feel they need to follow.
And if there's a precedent set by another city, maybe we can look at how their city attorney's office navigated that. And see how the decisions were made with that.
And the reason behind it,
and the reason behind it.
What sparked that reasoning.
And this is I think this is what's great about having this discussion, is that the potential here to learn more about things.
Right.
And, you know, to Cash's point, attorneys need to be careful.
Right.
And very cautious.
Paid to be fair.
Yeah.
Well, because you don't want somebody coming back and going, you said this was okay, and it wasn't.
Right. And the thing is, you know, if we're just handing out a flyer saying, look at this, or we have an entire communications department, help develop a website where people could go to it and look at some of the beautiful buildings we have now, you know, from the depot to the bank to, you know, this tiny little house that was designated or whatever. And that's what we need to do with the information, and we could send the people to that website.
I have one other thing that you all should look at, and it's on the Littleton website. So I would say look up Littleton Legacy List. And it's something I worked on with one of the other gals in the commission who was a planner, and she did this whole thing with GIS, and we did a layer, and this took a while to go through, and this was also during the pandemic too. But what it is an overlay that shows, it shows the local landmarks, but then it shows buildings that have been determined eligible for National Register, State Register, or would be locally landmark eligible. And so it's not saying you have any restrictions, you're tied to this, you have to do this. It's just showing like these buildings have historic, architectural, cultural, archaeological significance to the city for whatever reason. Somebody looks at that, so you can click on, the building. And then if we had a historic photo from the museum, then we put the historic photo there. We put a current photo. If there was any history from a previous survey, we would put that in. And then there's contact information. So if you are interested in talking to us about, the fact that your building's historic and significant, like there's no obligation or anything. But it kind of raises awareness that, oh my gosh, I have this historical building. And then, maybe they start finding out a little bit, or they read a little bit, and they're like, if something's named after a certain person, like that's how, Bowles, like in Littleton, it's like, this was connected to the Bowles family? Oh my gosh. And then it starts like, wow, maybe I could, kind of thing.
And how did you, so if it was during COVID, how did you pull that information or slice it? So if you're looking on, Jewel Street or whatever, and you're going to house 1519, how did you surmise that and get that information? Property information or?
So there was some stuff like where surveys had been done. And so buildings had been determined eligible through the survey process. Diane Ray Tomaso did a survey with Michael Paglia of Littleton Boulevard, the Mid-Mod Mile.
Yeah.
And so they did this tiering project of which were the most significant, which were the next level, and then which was the lowest priority. And so, and they had national, state, and local determinations on each form. So and all the forms are scanned and online. So we were able to pull that information and find out like, okay, which ones are National Register eligible. And so we did that layer, and then, and then we would contact the museum, and it's like, okay, do you have a picture of this? These are the ones we need pictures on. And so then they could, scan them and email them to us.
That's cool.
Yeah, so having that kind of list that, would alert people that, hey, you have an important resource. If you wanted to, find out more about that, this is who you would contact, kind of thing. And so kind of planting that seed.
Yeah. That's an important part of this as well. It's difficult with us being quasi-judicial, but it is an important part to do the outreach, and whatever way we can do this and fall within the legal requirements of quasi-judicial, our
or hold
authority.
an open house.
Yeah.
So post it as a public meeting.
Yeah.
Invite people to come in. If you have certain areas that have historic resources, if they have like a little neighborhood group where they have a website or a next door page, post it there and invite people. Maybe you have multiple ones so that you're kind of targeting different areas and you bring people from that area. Have some historic maps. And people come up and go, oh my gosh, I remember when that was, the Shakey's Pizza. And I remember when, Cinderella City and, all of that. And then you start getting some of the oral history and the stories. And, they can say, well, the one thing that's left from that era is this building here. And you're like, what? I had no idea that was connected to so-and-so. And then you find other resources that you weren't even aware of. And then you decide, do we want to survey that neighborhood because all these people have come here and talked about this building and that building and this building. Like, we need to maybe apply for a grant to get a survey of that neighborhood. And then from that survey, then you get the recommendations. And if you work with, you know, like professional consultants for the survey, you know, you can ask them, can you put in the local landmark criteria and evaluate it for not only national and state register eligibility, but also for local. And then you have, again, more info that you can plug into the GIS layer and kind of that legacy list, as well as, you know, your historical society that can, you know, reach out to people or show up at events and, you know, like, do you live in this neighborhood? You know, we're interested in getting your stories. We're interested in designating resources from this neighborhood. Contact us. Or contact your liaison kind of thing.
Cool.
So,
Lauren or Melinda, do you have any questions? I don't want to leave you out.
yeah.
No, this has been a fantastic discussion. So thank you, Chris, very much for coming. This has been wonderful.
I'm going to leave a phone number and email address for Rick Cronenberger, who was the chair of the HPC. He's also the one who created the ordinance in Littleton, and kind of has been the force behind everything that started preservation in Littleton. And I would suggest you reach out to him and you can tell him I gave the contact information, because he can talk to you, especially about, you know, when you create a program from the ground up, and I'm sure he'd be willing to come talk to you guys too.
Sure.
About some of the pitfalls and pluses of, you know, things that have happened in Littleton, and, you know, obviously learn from others' mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, some things might be that you create on your own, because every community is unique and has different challenges. Some of our challenges are all, you know, the same, with the 4-story flat roof buildings going up everywhere, but some of our challenges are very unique, you know, from community to community, and that is the
I
benefit.
gotta stop us because Lauren fell off,
Oh, no, okay.
so we're down to
So we don't
3
have
people.
Okay.
So we'll have to pause for a moment, see if Lauren is able to log back in.
Okay.
We reach out to Lauren, the possible. Brian, do you have her? I don't know if I have her number.
Yeah, I was just looking. I have an email.
Or
I talk too much.
Well, no, actually, what was going through my head, it might be good because that you're just writing his phone number down, not saying out loud since it's recorded.
yeah.
No, I put an email and a phone number.
Thank you.
I really wish.
Did I tell you that my granddaughter broke?
Oh,
She was on the 5th stair.
how old is she?
3.
Ooh.
She's on the 5th stair from the bottom, decided to fly,
Oh, God.
jump
Oh,
to the
God.
bottom.
So Harper started, okay, so we've got Harper in swim lessons right now. And because my wife
Right.
actually teaches the infant swim stuff. So we're exposing her to water safety early on, and
Because she's
You never know what
almost 2.
she's almost 2. You never know, she might grow up to be some sort of, you know, Olympic swimmer now as a result of.
Hey,
Lauren, are you back? Sorry, I think we lost you first.
Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
No worries. We had to cut because that we only have 4, so that ended our quorum when you dropped off. So no problem at all. But Chris, I don't remember where you left off.
No, just that, you know, I think Rick would be willing to come out and talk with you. And the one last thing I just want to throw out is, I know it's challenging with quasi judicial, but if you all wanted to come to an Aurora HPC meeting and kind of
Yes.
observe, or if you want to have two people come so that it's not, you
Yeah.
know, and take notes. You know, I would love to invite you all, and the April meeting could be good just because we're bringing back the solar panels. We hope that they're moved to a new location by the time that
When do you meet?
the second Tuesday of the month, so it'll be April 9th at 6 p.m.
I would love to,
Okay, yeah, I just,
I would be interested in that as
Okay.
well.
and I'm gonna leave some of my cards here.
As a, I don't know, just because.
I think you already have one of my
yeah,
cards.
I do.
I don't
Thank
know
you
this
so much.
type of stuff. Do you record your meetings?
So they haven't in the past, but when I got an assistant in December and we started out in January, she's like, I'm gonna record them just so it's easier for me to do the notes and I can go back and check things. And then at our last meeting, we knew it was gonna be controversial, and so we thought, you know what? We should probably still record this meeting just because if they try to say, well, you said this, we'll be like, we have the audio version to say, no, we did not say that kind of thing. And so it just kind of seems like, I think any more, you know, Zoom calls and webinars and all that kind of stuff, they're just recording things. Because sometimes it is helpful to go back and listen to something again.
We actually put ours on YouTube, the city's YouTube page, when it's working,
Yeah.
not tonight.
Aurora is kind of funny about posting things, and we have very little control over our website, which we are trying to work on, and our social media stuff. And I feel like we're missing reaching a lot of people because of that. So we're working on that.
So I have a question. I know we meet the third Wednesday of the month, but if it was posted and everyone agreed, could we move the meeting to the second Tuesday of the month and we all attend this and somehow get it just
I don't know, logistics behind
audio
that.
recorded?
Logistics behind that might be a lot.
Okay, just,
I mean, I'm not shooting the idea down, but
No, I like the idea too, but yeah, the logistics are gonna be difficult, especially because like we can't, there's gonna be enough carryover, especially like the item C, outreach and what we can do and all that, because the comms people aren't here tonight. That's gonna be next month, and there's no way we're gonna get people 2 nights in a row for quorum for a
See, that's what I was gonna say. Well, my suggestion would be post it and say that HPC members are going to the HPC meeting in Aurora.
right.
And so that there could be multiple ones of you going, and it's a public meeting. So if people want to come and hear what you're hearing
Right.
and to see, oh, are they going to be discussing anything? They
And
can
we-
come to the meeting and see that.
Right, and we
we're
only
gonna
have to
record
do
it, so-
audio, it doesn't have to be, or audio, right,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be video. I mean,
well, I mean, technically speaking, you're of a different elected, or you're a different governmental
And,
branch, yeah,
angle.
right. Yeah, I could go, no problem.
Sure.
I mean,
I
or you
don't,
could decide to have 2 people come,
yeah.
and it's something that maybe down the road,
Yeah,
we
Right.
look at how do we navigate this, because I would like to bring, you know, some of my people out here, and I want us to go to a Fort Collins meeting. I know it's buku far, I don't care. They're doing some amazing things up in Fort Collins that I think we could benefit from.
wouldn't it be cool if we could all regionally just kind of meet on a regular basis?
Yeah.
And talk about the issues that are happening, because it's so difficult, because we're this little pocket, and Littleton's this little pocket, and my God, we didn't even think about it when we're writing this ordinance,
right.
to invite Littleton into our meetings and say, hey, what did you guys do? You know, and we did a tremendous amount of research on our own, but, so that.
No, I'm looking at what are other people
Would-
doing? I don't wanna,
would
why
Aurora-
reinvent the wheel if somebody else has already done it?
Maybe would Aurora consider bringing their meeting over here April 9th and we could just record the whole thing, because we could do that.
I could see the solar panel homeowner being kind of grumpy about that.
Yeah, we gotta go to
You want
where?
to track to Inglewood.
Englewood.
The other thing you all might want to consider is, at the end of January, early February is the Colorado Preservation Incorporated
Yep.
annual state preservation conference.
Mhm.
And you should try to see, they always have scholarships.
Yeah,
available?
folks from this commission have gone in the past.
Okay.
And I think under that scholarship, I have not. I can't remember who's gone, but it's always at times that have been difficult for me with work, but others have gone to that.
Well, they already have,
I've gone and
Okay.
CJ's gone.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, they have this date set, next year's will be in Colorado Springs.
Oh, wow.
I kind of miss them being in Denver, but, it's definitely worth going. They have, you know, a lot of good presentations, and, they always get these great keynote speakers that come from out of state, but, are just really engaging and helpful and amazing. So, that's something else that if some people haven't gone, they really should try to get, even if you can only go for one day, like, look at the schedule and see which is the best day and go one
what
day.
is it called? Is there a website or?
Yeah, Colorado Preservation Inc., I'll write it on here. And they are also really good about, if you can only go one day, that somebody else could go the other day.
Oh, yeah.
So you can kind of share a registration as well. That's something to consider. So I hate to ask this question, but do you have anybody with a preservation background on the commission?
Lauren Cooper.
I feel like I know that.
Chris,
Are you with CDOT?
actually, I was until recently, yes.
Okay, I was like, I swear she's with CDOT. Okay.
Yes, and we had Jason O'Brien was on the commission for a while too.
He moved out of Inglewood, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, now I know. I was like,
Yeah, because we don't have those.
I knew you.
We don't have those professional requirements in our ordinance, and frankly, I'm not sure we could, because I'm not sure we would have enough people in Inglewood to fill those out. It's only 38,000 people in
Yeah.
Inglewood, so I don't know of a lot of folks in those professions living in Inglewood, but.
You would
There are
be
a few.
surprised.
Yeah.
And you might not make it a requirement, but you could say it's preferred to have, you know, a historic preservation, you know, somebody with some kind of historic or history or preservation background, architectural background, just because I think that would add a lot to the commission. And I mean, when I was on Littleton's, besides Rick Cronenberger, like, we were the only two that really, I guess we had one archaeologist, but, you know, everybody else was citizens, which is great. I mean, we need citizen involvement, like, you know, they're obviously the biggest part of the community, and so they need to be involved. But it's also good to have, you know, some professional who can say, oh, you know what, did you think about this? Or we can't do it that way, or, you know what, is federal funding involved? Wow, that involves a whole another process that could help protect this building.
Brian or Kim, you'll know, I think planning and zoning works that way, or at least encourages people of certain professions to be on that board, right?
A little bit of everything.
Yep.
They don't encourage, but I mean, there's a whole group of everything. People on.
There's
a lot
developer
of
interest,
stuff.
there's things
There's a
like that.
developer,
Inherently, that settles.
there's a telecommunications, there's a lot of backgrounds on there. They don't ask for preferred, but it's, there's a collected group of people.
Well, I
There's
think,
the contact information for Rick, cell number and email, and then there's the Colorado Preservation website as well.
And I'll just take a picture of it and pass it
Okay,
around.
yeah. And if I can help with anything else, you know, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help out.
Yeah, thank you so much for your generosity with your time tonight. Very, very informative, really helpful to talk to coordinate with someone who's done it for a long time and professionally, and for another city with a different set of experiences as we navigate our way through the process. So thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Just a second, thank you for that information. So you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting.
I'm gonna stay for a little bit longer. I'm just, because I'm kind of curious.
Sure.
As I'm trying to,
By all means,
yeah. I don't want to say like alter, but there are things that we need to fix or, you know, change, because you know, we've been doing this since 1986, but some of our policies are from 1986 and they need to kind of come into the 21st century. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of sit and listen.
Yeah, by all
Okay.
means. But thank you again so much.
You're
We
welcome.
really
Anytime.
appreciate it. So with that, we'll move into the second item of new business, which is the historic Inglewood membership and the discussion of, the requirement, I think, is 3 members of the commission should be, have to be members of historic Inglewood.
Brian, do you recall what that is? We had 2. CJ was formerly on the board with Historic Inglewood, and she ended up leaving the board to go do other things. So CJ is still
I
on this.
think the original ordinance said that at least 2 members of the commission should be members of Historic Inglewood.
And I don't think that,
That's not there anymore, yeah.
is it? I thought that was still there. I thought that part didn't change. I'm trying to look up the municipal code while we're talking.
So obviously with, it's hard enough to get people on our board, let alone on the commission. So that is a distinct challenge. Obviously, I'm the president of Historic Inglewood, so I serve both positions, and I'm on, I kind of help bring and communicate things from Historic Inglewood over here to the Historic Preservation Commission and do the same back to Historic Inglewood. It would be nice to get another member from our board. And we can talk item A into.
I was, read my mind.
Maybe we talk item A, because item A is on our board.
Yes. And she'd be phenomenal.
She would be phenomenal.
But we don't have any vacancies on this commission.
So we do not, so it is full right now.
I believe that is
So,
correct.
so the person that, and I apologize for missing last month, but
Right.
I had to be on a call. So the person that council voted to add to
I believe his
this,
name is Joe, yes.
has he attended?
He came last month.
Yeah, he
Okay,
came.
so his first meeting, okay.
He was valuable. I think he's got a background in construction, I believe, yes.
Sounds right.
Okay. I think one thing that would help is making sure everybody has contact information.
Yeah, yeah.
So everyone can make sure we contact each other, and touch base and say, hey.
Staying within the open meetings law, obviously, but his contact.
Well, yeah, just, if,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will reiterate, and of course, there's the people who aren't here. I heard from Ken Chu, he had to go to a funeral, but it would be helpful for all of us and for me, if you're not going to be at the meeting, if this could be passed on to others that aren't here tonight, if you can tell us beforehand. I know things come up, I get life happens, but it just, when we're this close on quorum, it's obviously very frustrating if everyone shows up, especially now that we're back in person
Yeah.
or hybrid.
yeah.
That if folks show up and we don't have a quorum and we can't do the meeting, or we're like one off losing a quorum like we are tonight, so.
Right.
So CJ did text me about 20 minutes after the meeting starting and said, I can't find the meeting link, and I scrambled to get it to her, and she just wasn't able to join it.
Yeah,
Too late.
there was a chat in here from Melinda that I didn't see, but I never saw CJ pop up on here trying to get in or attempting to get in, so I don't know if she couldn't get the link.
Yeah.
So, Brian, before we leave, if I can make sure to get your card, I mean, I had no one's contact information last month except for yours, Matt,
Yeah.
so, and I let you know,
Yeah.
which I'm not even a voting member, I'm only, but it's just being respectful, so.
Yeah.
So far, you're doing pretty good.
No,
for you've actually showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That goes,
The best thing to do, Shelley sends notifications out a few different times before
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
Respond to Shelley, respond to staff. So we know
I
who's
have
coming.
not received
Okay, we'll make sure
the
you're on.
emails, yes.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. I mean, it's nice for me to know, but Eric Sampson, who's our staff liaison, he's really the one that needs to know.
Yeah,
Communicate.
Eric?
Eric is our staff liaison. Brian's just filling in.
I think Eric's sitting on a beach somewhere right now.
I think that is
Yes.
correct.
I think Brian's been here both times I was here.
That's funny, I think you've just
Both
hit.
times you were here,
Yeah.
Eric was sitting on a beach somewhere.
That is-
Hey,
I
you're his
don't- I
boss,
don't-
right? You let him do
I
it.
don't know if I don't think I even know who Eric is.
Eric Sampson, I'm sure you met him. He's done presentations before council.
And Eric is very, Eric's great. He's
Yeah,
very
fantastic.
reliable. He's always here. He's a great liaison. He does a great job. So,
And I would be happy to set up a time to meet with Eric too, like,
Oh, cool, good.
you know, just.
Yeah.
If he wants to pick my brain or if we want to talk
Yeah.
through some things,
so
let him know.
Yeah, because last time I was here, Brian had his foot in a boot. Because I was looking, I'm like, oh, he's free and clear, and now Sophie has her foot in a boot. So,
Oh,
yeah, so,
sorry. To return back to the historic Inglewood membership, isn't our ordinance 16-12-1?
So y'all, in the new code is chapter 12, and I did not see.
Chapter
anything-
12 is not on the website.
No, so
in the
Yeah.
municipal
we're having
code.
some trouble because Muni
get
code doesn't link to our current UDC, the one that was adopted. There's a note in there that Unicode is being updated to include it, but our code is on our webpage.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't see anything about whether or not there needs to be a number of members that serve on
Historic Inglewood.
historic Inglewood.
I mean, I think this is probably possibly a larger discussion. It is good to have that membership there to keep the connection between the two organizations. One would not exist, this one would not exist if it weren't for Historic Inglewood's work, specifically Doug Cohen. So keeping these two organizations in sync, so that they don't drift apart and drift separate, goals, I think is incredibly important. We probably need to have a discussion to make sure, and a further review in the code to see what that states and how we can accomplish that. Or if it's necessary to continue that now, because we are now, we're not the young organization that's looking for people that are interested in this topic and get it rolling. We're kind of migrating out of the startup phase, so to speak.
Right. Well, and so we have I thought the old ordinance I thought said just members of Historic Inglewood, not necessarily board members at Historic Inglewood, right?
Members, okay, interesting.
I thought that's what it said, but
Okay,
I don't have that
I'm
in
good
front
with
of
that.
me. But you're a member, you're on the board.
Right, that's
You're the president.
President, yeah.
Okay. Is anyone else a member on the board who's currently on the commission of Historic
I
Inglewood?
believe I'm a member, not on the board, but I think I'm just a general member. I know I was. I may have let it lapse.
Well, I'll check on that, Lauren. I'll let you know.
Thanks.
Melinda, I think Melinda is also a member. I'm certain of that. So there is membership representation.
Is the Historical Society, do they support, like, how do they intersect, I guess? Because we have an Aurora Historical Society, we have an Aurora Museum Foundation, and then we have the HPC. So like, how do these groups intersect?
So the two organizations generally don't, because we serve different purposes, but the importance was to have kind of a like-minded philosophy between both organizations so that we can kind of guide and help HPC and HPC. It does raise a valid point, is it's necessary to have that requirement in there, but of course, yeah, there are several organizations.
Matt, if I can jump in, I always kind of thought of it as like kind of not a replacement, but along the same lines of the professional qualifications idea of like, if you're a member of Historic Inglewood, you're going to have a passion and a better understanding of the city's history. And so you'll naturally then have expertise that you can bring to the commission. That's kind of how I always thought of it.
I like that.
I agree.
Okay.
So we need to look at what the code actually states with that, and if it made it to the new UDC.
Yeah.
Brian, is that something that staff can?
Yeah, we can see with it.
See how things evolve with that?
I just put a copy of the original thing in the in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not on the Teams meeting and we can't screen share because of the TV being down, regrettably.
But if you share it, Melinda, we'll start there. Public.
Appreciate it. I think, and it's probably something, maybe Cash, if you're okay with this, pushing to the next meeting to have.
The
Yeah,
commission comprised of 7 members and at least 2 shall be recommended by the Inglewood Historic Preservation Society.
Oh,
Didn't say they had to be members, just recommended.
and it's unclear whether that's in the new ordinance. Yeah, I think both because we're unclear on what the new ordinance actually says, because it's not on the city's website. I think we're gonna have to push that to next meeting. That is also a discussion that it would be nice if we had the majority or everyone here to have that discussion,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
fair.
everyone's viewpoint on what that should look like going forward. Because if it's not required by the ordinance anymore, then it becomes a discussion of, do we want to ask council to give us people who are affiliated with Historic Inglewood? Do you want to get people?
It's an interesting
Yeah,
issue.
exactly. So I think it merits more discussion, and plus we have to figure out what the ordinance now says after the
Right.
revision, because we paid no attention to that part of the ordinance because it wasn't germane to what we were doing with the landmark designation process as we were making revisions. So, but it does sound like we have multiple members, so even if the ordinance still says that, it sounds like we're
still within the
compliant.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the other thing too is I do think we have a full commission now. We had a vacancy for a while, for 6+ months or whatever it was, but I think we have a full 7 now, if I'm counting correctly. So we don't currently have any vacancies, but yeah, we'll put this on old business for next month, and hopefully more folks are able to make it, and we'll know what the ordinance says and we can talk about it more. The next item on new business, the possible town hall meeting concerning landmark designation. We kind of already got into this earlier of what can we do as far as outreach as a commission and staff. I think the communications staff in particular was supposed to be looking into this, I think in conjunction with the city attorney's office, of what's permissible for us to do. And if specifically, if we can go out and have town hall meetings about this as commissioners or as a commission, if we publicly post them and that type of thing, to try to generate more interest. But we don't have any of the communications people or the city attorney's office here. So Brian, I'm assuming you don't have information about this topic.
No, only that I know that they've talked about it.
Okay.
I don't know where they've landed on anything, so
Okay.
we'll rustle them up starting tomorrow and try to get this back to you guys next month.
Yeah, so we'll leave that on the agenda for next month, and I suspect we may be talking about that for a while. Next item is the landmark plaques, and
Can I
sure, yeah.
So, I know that a couple of us council members are going to be having town halls. Is there anything that you want us to just say during town halls or bring up that there's possible information that could be coming out, or a flyer that,
Do a brochure.
a brochure or flyer or anything that we could hand out or have available at our town halls?
I mean, well, I'll invite others to weigh in. I mean, I have a lot of things I'd like you to say.
There's a lot
Well, be
I'd like
careful
to
because
say.
Kim might actually say it,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Without
all about transparency and honesty, so.
Yes, I appreciate that. Without consulting, without having the communications people and the city attorney's office weigh in more on it, I wouldn't be comfortable with telling you anything to say on that front out at the meeting, but I don't know. Brian, if you have thoughts.
I don't, other than, do you know when these meetings are? So
The 20, let me look right now.
Well, Rita's having.
It's the 21st of April, I think. Is that when it is?
Are you separate from Rita on hers?
No.
I have a couple of thoughts and I don't, what about, I mean, at the very minimum, like, could she read off the letter that we're going to be sending to all of the, that communications is sending out that we've been working on? Cause that language has already been approved. And, or just tell people that there's the landmark application available, give them copies, that sort of thing.
I mean, that sounds totally reasonable to me.
So the 18th of April,
And that's Rita and you.
yeah.
Yeah, our letter even has like a QR code on it for people to connect to the website, such as it is. The website isn't very helpful, but
And I can reach out to, the city attorney's office and see, because me being in the capacity of wearing the hat of historic Inglewood, maybe that in some way would be different. And I might be able to get a guest spot on your town hall meeting.
Yeah, and it's more Rita's than mine, but, you know, I communicate with her on occasion.
Sure.
So I could, and she would not have an issue at all.
I feel like Rita.
If there's a flyer, there
Right.
that we could hand out and stuff like
I
that.
mean, I'll have to talk to the city attorney's office, yeah.
So, I mean, and if there's something already in the works that's gonna be sent out or whatever, we could bring it up and say, hey, look, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the more touch points with it, the better, right? It couldn't hurt as long as it's, you know, appropriate
Right.
to do it.
It just,
So,
you know, and
yeah.
it's starting to open that door to communicate and stuff like that, so.
So we have a couple of different brochures about what does designation mean and that kind of thing. So I'd be happy to send you, just so you have an example of something else that exists. And, you know, we put them in different city, like the libraries, all the libraries have copies of them.
Oh, good idea.
So then when people go there, oh, what's this kind of thing?
Well, and then maybe our communications group could look
Yeah.
at the brochures and,
Create
you know,
something from
create
it.
something from it, and that could be used at the town hall and then the
Send
library.
everything to me,
Yeah.
so that I can disseminate it to the group. I'll get my card. when
Okay.
we leave
Yeah,
town, and we
that would
make
be
sure
great.
See, and I
that we're
think
not
that-
giving one person more
Yeah,
information.
Yeah.
Right,
No,
that'd
that's
be
fine.
great. And then that way, you know, could look at it, and then maybe communications could look at it, put something together, and then it could be used at the town hall and stuff. And this is what I was kind of talking about, where at, you know, the concerts or at neighborhood nights and stuff, start getting some information out and spreading the word. I want to break out in song, you know, spread. I won't do that, so just, okay.
Yeah, great. No, thank you. That's good. Okay, the plaques, Matt, what's the update on the plaques?
We've been working very hard with the museum, and I have not had much of a chance to, so if we push that to the next meeting, that would be good. For the benefit of those that were not here, be careful, don't drop it, you might hurt yourself. That's the plaque.
Oh, geez Louise.
It's quite heavy.
That is a prototype of our plaques.
What is
and
this building?
That is the old Tuileries
Oh, the
dance hall.
amusement park.
The amusement park.
Okay.
Did-
Oh, wow. For such a small.
What amusement?
The Tuileries that where King Super sits now, where actually this was once Tuileries right here.
Oh, really?
This was an amusement park.
So what, how long, what years?
such
That
a
was,
small park.
yeah, exactly. I'll tell you the story behind this here in a little bit, but it was up until about 1908, I think right around 1908, 1910, right around that. Then the National Film Company came in, and then Alexander Industries. And this was later known as the Alexander Industries building, where the film studio. But,
I was just a baby, that's why I don't remember.
and Inglewood City Hall, after Alexander Industries left, and it was Inglewood City Hall until Inglewood City Hall was moved to another location, actually. I believe it was 1950s that they moved. But anyway, as good as I could mill it, this little object right here is the griffin, which as you walk down the stairwell over here, you'll see the griffin up on the wall there. That is representative of the griffin that used to be on top, which originally came from the Arapahoe County Courthouse downtown.
Wow.
So, funny thing, when the Griffin was on top of the Inglewood City Hall, there was a red light bulb that was installed in its beak, and when that light turned on, was an indication that there was a fire call, and all the volunteer fire department should.
How neat. Interesting. How cool.
Yeah, but anyway, this for the benefit, Kim and Chris, I actually made this as a prototype. So unfortunately, I believe that I won't be able to make them because of the potential conflict of interest associated. So we have a wonderful prototype here, and I'm trying to figure out some way to obviously I made this prototype back in, call it
2019.
The conflict of, because you'd be making decisions and.
Well, the way that it was explained is that quasi-judicial board, as one of the members, I would be making the plaque that would go on something. I promised to make only 10 of these because this is actually.
It also should be your responsibility to have to make.
That's correct. I have spent many years in manufacturing. Single source is not a good idea. Diversity of supply chain. That is. So anyway.
So you milled that and everything.
I milled this. Yeah, I milled this, and this is made out of a sheet of phosphorus bronze. That's part of the reason why it's so thick. Early on, I think it was 2018 or 2019 that I made this, but material costs were much lower then because of the copper specifically, which is the main ingredient for this alloy, was much cheaper then. And there was a local distributor in Inglewood that had drop, basically, which is they would cut large sheets and they would have these small sections that were worthless to them, but had the material value to them, with actual copper and bronze. So I was able to buy a small sheet of this, and I'm thinking, well, this could be practical because we could just continue to buy the small sheets of this, the leftover pieces, and mill them out of those. But I mean, honestly, that's not a practical thing. If 50 people come up and say, hey, I want my property historically designated, and my machine is not nearly as capable as a lot of commercial machines. So the milling operation on this was about 5 hours. So I don't have to do anything other than, hit the go button, but.
And now they could say, well, we'll just get a 3D printer to.
Well, actually, 3D printer, that was one of the things that we talked about before this, but the problem with 3D printers is that they generally, that's a plastic of some sort or some sort of polymer. And the problem with those is that they will not hold up. And with ultraviolet, it's just, even the ones that say they will eventually break down.
You did a phenomenal job.
So this is very expensive now, material costs. I wanted something of substance, but I think we could go with a thinner plate. And what I would really like is Inglewood High School has a STEM program, and they have a milling machine there that puts my machine to shame, if they still have it. It's either a Tormach or a Haas mill that they have there, and I think it would be pretty amazing if these were made actually as part of the STEM program with Inglewood High School.
At Inglewood High
It
School,
involves local, and kind of gets them to buy into. When they pass a plaque, they're like, oh my gosh, we made those in class, or
right.
in a club or something, and
It'd be great for the Inglewood, the wayfinding, for the neighborhood signs, that they could get Inglewood, I think the woodworking and stuff like that, they could get Inglewood or the Colorado's Finest to help with that too.
Alternatively with this too, considering this is a actual tangible prototype.
It's a weapon.
It's true. We could go now to vendors and request, quotes for casting, because casting would be probably a quicker thing than milling with this. So considering this is a tangible prototype, we just say, make a sand cast of this, and then they could potentially cast. Still, there's a fair bit of cost associated with it, and I'll continue my research on that.
But it's not like you're gonna need 1,000 of them. I mean.
Well, we can only hope.
That means the developers are going away. So.
Well, and take your time. We don't have any designated properties yet to put them on, so we're good on that. So thanks for looking into that, and I'll just keep that on the agenda as you research it, and we can keep talking about it. We'll just shift it down to to old business, which is our next item. The landmark designation letter that I think, finally made all of the grammatical and punctuation corrections to last month, and we passed a motion carried to send that letter out to properties that had been identified in the Pinion survey, and I believe a few additional properties that had been specifically provided to Eric to send that letter to. I bring this on here just to confirm, Brian, do you know, did that go out after we passed that last month?
I do not.
Okay.
So I'll have to confirm with him and see if we can send you guys an update.
Sure. Let's make it about that.
Where was this survey? Like, was it an online survey where people could weigh in or have like?
It was,
They hired the Pinion?
Pinion Environmental, did it. It was done through a grant. So grant money was applied for and received by the city, and then, they performed it. Pinion did a wonderful job on it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and we did some follow-up work to sift through it because, there was some situations where the property had been identified in that survey and it was a gravel parking lot, right? The building was not in existence anymore, that type of thing. So the commissioners broke up those properties and did some additional research, whether online or in person or whatever, to figure out, to cull it down a little bit from the number that Pinion identified. Okay, that brings us to staff's choice. Brian, do you have anything for staff's choice?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner's choice. I don't have anything for commissioner's choice. Matt, do you have commissioner's choice?
Sure, I do. We have a lecture coming up this month, and I certainly hope that I have the information on it at this moment. And if I don't, I'll promise you that you'll send out a reminder, or there'll be a reminder sent out. Let me see here. I believe it's coming up actually real soon here, so.
26th. I'm signed up for it.
The 26th.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes,
Tuesday.
it's Diane Ray
Diane
Tomaso.
Ray Tomaso.
Where is it?
On Arapahoe Acres.
Yes, Diane Ray Tomaso, and it'll be, and we'll be doing it again 2:30 at the English Public Library, 6:30. Thank you. I'm president of the Historic Society. I should know this. See, glad you came.
Well, I keep getting email reminders, and
Yeah.
I've been telling other people about it. So
6:30 p.m. at Table Public House over at Platte River, and it's to continue the discussion of and kind of lecture and history of Arapahoe Acres. The other thing that's been taking a substantial amount of time from the Historic Society is the museum and the associated planning, which everything takes substantially longer than anybody thinks it will when you first start. We are working on it. We're shooting for an opening in April, and that'll be on the second floor here. Yes, we are getting there. It's coming down to literally everything's going to happen pretty much all at once, I think, because supply chain problems, getting things done problems, getting people to agree problems, all of that.
Yeah, I understand.
A little bit of anxiety here. It's been a month of a lot. But anyway, we're planning on opening to the public in April, and the first exhibit will be the history of Cinderella City, and it's going to be pretty neat.
All right. Good luck. We look forward to that.
Yeah.
Massive project. So yeah, good luck.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Melinda, do you have anything for Commissioner's Choice?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. And Lauren, do you have anything for Commissioner's Choice?
No, I don't.
Okay. That brings us to the end of the agenda then, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Moved by Matt Crabtree to adjourn. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Melinda. We'll stand in adjournment at 8:22.
oh, it's not too bad actually.
Yeah.
Usually go longer.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Unless we vote.
Thanks, Lauren.
Bye. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Melinda.
Good night.
Good night.
And I took this down. I didn't want to put it on the record.
That's
Cronenberger's email and phone number. I don't know if someone wants to keep that. I'm not a paper guy, so.
Yeah, sure. So
So you're limited to 2 hours